Good afternoon and welcome, everyone, to our Travel Bloggers Roundtable session titled Blogs with Spanish Flair. We hope you're enjoying the Conexión Spain Virtual trade show so far. The trade show itself is hosted by the 5 tourist offices of Spain located in the USA and Canada. That's Chicago, New York, Miami, Los Angeles, and Toronto. And for today's webcast, we are reaching you from the Tourist Office of Spain in Chicago. Thanks for stopping by our seminar, the second in the series of 3 webcasts taking place during the 2 days that the trade show runs. We're joined today by Rod Younger from Books for Spain, Mike Booth from EllegreeOnline.net, and Abby Paul of LarkyCanuck.com. The format of today's roundtable is as follows. We will hear from each of our 3 bloggers and view their presentations. And please type any questions you may have at any time, and they will be held in the queue till the end. Once all the presentations have ended, we will have the Q&A session where you may ask questions for any of the 3 of them. Let's welcome our first speaker. Rod Younger joins us from Marbella, Spain this afternoon. Rod is founder of Books for Spain, an online bookshop which specializes in print and ebooks about Spain in English. He also has a prolific blog with numerous articles about many regions in Spain, book reviews, interviews with authors, and much more. He was born in the UK and is the son of Spanish parents. Rod will pronounce his real name for you as a segue into his presentation.
Many thanks, Patricia. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. As Patricia said, I'm born in the UK, but of Spanish parents, and my real name, I'll say this slowly, is Rodrigo Manso de Zúñiga Domenech. And as you may imagine, when my parents moved to Spain, my father thought that the British would not be able to pronounce that, and so he changed Rodrigo for Roderick, and he dropped the Manso de Zúñiga and was left with his mother's name, which was Younger. So I have a very British name now, but my real name is Rodrigo Manso de Zúñiga Younger. Anyway, you can call me Rod, and I would like to tell you a little bit about Zaragoza, which is perhaps one of the lesser-known cities of Spain, and is one of the prizes featured in the show. Zaragoza is the capital of Aragon and is located in the northeast of Spain. As you can see on the map, it's in the northeast and it's midway between Madrid and Barcelona. Therefore, it's easily reachable by high-speed train, and it also has an international airport. Aragon, some of you may be familiar with. It was a very big and important kingdom in the Middle Ages, and King Ferdinand married Queen Isabel of Castilla, and they finished the reconquest of Spain from the Moors. So it is a very traditionally important region of Spain, and a very beautiful region of Spain. Zaragoza is the capital of Aragon, and there you can see visions of the Virgin Mary, frescoes painted by Goya, and Goya was born relatively close to Zaragoza. It has a 12th century Gothic cathedral, and there are substantial Roman remains. It also, like most Spanish cities, has great food and wine, many tapas bars in the old quarter. The most important monument in Zaragoza is the San Salvador Cathedral. It's a 12th century Gothic cathedral with Romanesque parts and Mudéjar decorations. Mudéjar is an important part of architecture in this part of Spain. It is a mixture of Moorish and Christian architecture and arises from the time of when the reconquest occurred. This is perhaps, as I say, arguably Aragon's most valuable and significant, or Zaragoza's, most valuable and significant monument. Within the cathedral, as I said, you can see visions of the Virgin Mary. The cathedral is built around a pillar, and it is claimed that the Virgin Mary appeared to the Apostle James, who is the patron saint of James, there when he was leaving Spain on his way back to the Holy Land. The pillar remains shrine to this day, and it is the subject of a very big fiesta in Zaragoza. It is their Saints' Day. The frescoes painted by Goya can be seen on Regina Martyrdom Dome. Once you've visited the cathedral, excuse me, the slides are slightly slow, there are a couple of other things that are really worth seeing in Saragossa. One is the permanent Goya exhibition. As I say, Goya comes from a village close to Saragossa, which also has some impressive Roman mosaics. And Saragossa was founded as Caesar Augusta by the Romans, and there is a route which combines 4 museums and the archaeological remains from the Roman Empire to see. These are perhaps the main monuments to see within Saragossa in the town centre that is in walking distance. And then just a short distance away, about 15-minute walk, is the Palacio de Aljaferia. This is an 11th century castle palace, and it's a stunning example of Muslim art. It was adapted by the Christian kings of Aragon after the Reconquest, and is now the home of Aragon's regional parliament. These are all the things that you can see, or that you must see, if you are spending a day or a couple of days in Saragossa. After that, within the region of Aragon, there are many, many things to see, many of which are a day trip away from Saragossa, and you really should not leave without seeing them. One of them is the city of Teruel. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's 90 minutes away from Saragossa. The roads are very good in Spain, and it has some of Spain's most important Mudéjar architecture. It also has a mausoleum which houses the alabaster tomb of Los Amantes, the lovers of Teruel. This is a 12th century story which is Spain's Romeo and Juliet, and there is a big feast around this, which was actually earlier this year, every year. It also has a Renaissance-style aqueduct and a dinosaur theme park and museum, as many dinosaur remains have been found in the area of Aragon. So dinosaurs are a local indigenous creature, or were. Then there's also the village of Albarracín, which is a medieval village with a 10th century castle and magnificent city walls with the narrow cobbled streets. It's 2 hours away from Saragossa, and it's beautiful and is quite a well-known tourist resort now, but it's absolutely well worth seeing. And then there's another village called Alcañiz, which has a stunning castle, which is now a parador, but was once the headquarters of the Order of Calatrava, which was one of the military knight orders in Spain. And this is a mere 45 minutes away. Excuse me. And then there's something here which I think is a must for those of you that are into the Camino de Santiago and also Romanesque architecture, a visit to Jaca. Jaca is actually the ancient capital of Aragon. It's known as the Cradle of Aragon, and there is a stunning monastery of San Juan de la Peña very close to Jaca, which is the burial place of a number of Aragonese kings. And it's home to, I said here, the Holy Grail. It's actually an imitation of the Holy Grail that is now held in Valencia. But the Holy Grail was alleged to have been kept here for a while. And it's built into a mountainside, and it's absolutely amazing. There's also the castle of Loire close by, which has been used in many film sets, including The Kingdom of Heaven, the Ridley Scott film. Then, if you are into wine, within an hour and a half of Saragossa, there is the Somontano wine region. This is one of Spain's up-and-coming wine regions with some award-winning wines. And if you happen to be in Saragossa on the right day of the month, you can catch the wine bus, visit a few wineries, and drink as much as you like. That's a fantastic visit. Closer to Saragossa, there are some lesser-known wine regions, Calatayud, Carañeña, and Campo de Borja, all of which produce very good wines and are worth a visit if you don't want to spend an hour and a half driving to Somontano. And then another alternative is to go to Tudela, which is 50 minutes away from Zaragoza, and this is actually Navarra, and it's one of the most important cities of Islamic origin in Spain with some, as you can see, some fantastic architecture, Islamic architecture. So in summary, I mean, Zaragoza is a fantastic city in its own right, but within an hour and a half of Zaragoza, you have some amazing architecture, some fantastic wineries, and some great scenery. So it's a wonderful place to visit, and certainly highly recommended. Just a little bit about us, as Patricia said. Books for Spain is the leading bookshop for books in English about Spain. We have thousands of books about Spain and many travel guidebooks, in fact over 250 travel and guidebooks, as well as over 90 Spanish cook and recipe books in English. So if you fancy reading up on your Spanish history or culture, please visit us, and our blog has lots of information about Spain as well. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Rod. Next, we welcome Mike Booth on the line from Granada, Spain. Mike is originally from Jackson, Michigan, but has lived in Spain for over 40 years and publishes an online magazine called Alegría. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Patricia. Hello, everyone. I want to thank the Spanish tourist offices for this opportunity to participate in this wonderful webcast. I'm going to try and give you a brief summary of my own very personal view of Spain. Let me see if I can find my first slide. Hold on. Here we go. That's me. It's all about loving Spanish Spain. Okay. It was November of 1968 when I first arrived in Spain. I was recently discharged from the U.S. Army, and I was pretty confused. President Nixon had just been elected. I gave away all my worldly goods except my cameras and caught a cheap Icelandic Airways flight to Luxembourg. Northern Europe was extremely cold and gray, so I started hitching south. It wasn't really my intention when I left to come to Spain, but when I started on my way down here, I remembered all that Hemingway stuff I read in high school, so I thought, well, I'll have a look. Later I went off Hemingway. Never mind. When I crossed the border into Spain at La Junquera, the sun came out, both literally and figuratively. Everything was new to me, with crisp edges on it, like a tree backlit by the sun. I began to feel better. Everything was interesting. Everything was challenging. I had to reinvent everything. Since I didn't speak the language, I was like a 2-year-old child again. Nevertheless, I had the feeling that a new life lay before me, if only I had the courage to grasp it. Spain has wonderful landscapes, but then all countries have wonderful landscapes. That wasn't what moved me most. What moved me most were the people. They seemed to me to be incredibly sincere and unpretentious, very unpredatory and unopportunistic. I found out later that in those days, a son who was ambicioso, ambitious, was considered a blot on the family. That changed later, of course, with progress. Spain seemed to me then like a place where you could still find human beings in their natural habitat. What a discovery. It made me want to dig into Spain, to learn more, to experience more. I still do. Men's fashion in my first Spanish pueblo ran to lovingly patched corduroy trousers, alpargata sandals with the soles made from old tires, and of course the boina, or black beret. Women mostly wore black dresses as a sign of mourning. Inevitably, somebody was always dying in their family, so some of them never got out of black. Everybody has their own metaphor for Spain. Mine is a love affair. 45 years on, Spain seems to me like the girl you fell in love with when you were young. And after all you've been through together, you love her more than ever. I met my love buying calamares in the municipal marketplace. I don't actually believe in heaven, but I thought I'd died and gone there. I had very little money, so I had to find some remunerative work. I started traveling up and down the Mediterranean coast and through the inland towns, writing and photographing travel articles and selling them to newspapers and magazines in the U.S. and Canada. I sold my first piece to the New York Times. I thought, this is easy. As it turned out, it wasn't so easy. One day I was hitching home and was picked up by an American couple driving a huge Chrysler. At least it looked huge on the twisty little Spanish road. There was a newspaper lying on the back seat, open to one of my articles. That was when the question of responsibility hit me full in the face. People are reading your articles, Mike, and they believe what you tell them. I used to go to the Diablo's bar, the Devil's bar, in the village every morning for breakfast. That's where the farmers, the road workers, and the bricklayers went, all with their black berets. We would breakfast on black coffee and a couple of glasses of a mixture of brandy and anise that they called sol y sombra, sun and shade. For years I thought this was the normal breakfast in Spain. Living in a mountain village, far from all tourism, held a lot of lessons for us. This is me and my new compañera. She wasn't my wife yet, but almost. Everything was in dramatic contrast to the lives we'd lived up until then. Nothing like Detroit nor Manchester. It was a life-changing experiences with lessons in patience, kindness, solidarity, essentially just basic humanity, but it seemed revolutionary to me coming from Detroit. The second year in our new village, I contracted a case of hepatitis that required a month of bed rest accompanied by daily injections. The father of a friend in the village, who'd been a medic in the Spanish Civil War, came up every single day to give me my shot. After about 3 weeks, another neighbor came up, one that I hardly knew, and he seemed very urgent, and he said, Miguel, I'm very sorry to hear that you'll be in bed for a month. He said, I want you to know that I have some money set aside, and if you need any help, I'll be glad to lend you some. I hardly knew the guy. This is something that will warm the heart of an exotic foreigner, believe me. We raised our children in the pueblo in a way that would not have been possible almost anywhere else. After the age of 5 or 6, we would just open the door and let them go out and play, knowing that they would be looked after wherever they went. The society of our village was so much like one big family that everybody attended everyone else's kids as their own. The village women would patch them up and console them when they got scrubbed knees or a bloody nose, and they fed them along with their own kids. Their favorite merienda, or afternoon snack, was chocolate con pan, chocolate with bread. In those days, to eat chocolate without bread was punished as a mild form of degeneracy. The changes in Spain have been so many and so fast that it doesn't seem possible. Our village used to have a couple of hundred mules and donkeys. Now it has a couple of hundred SUVs. We had the first bathroom in town. Now we have the worst one. Why? Because everyone else's is newer, and the more recent ones have granite sink surrounds, jacuzzi baths, and gold-plated taps. Never mind. In many important ways, Spain hasn't changed. Many lovable, human-centered customs still exist. One of the nicest ones is the kiss on both cheeks, accompanied, if you're lucky, by a big hug. It's universal for all family members and between good friends, even men. Whenever I meet my 40-year-old son in the coffee shop of the science faculty at the University of Granada where he teaches, he always gives me the hug and the kisses, even though he's with a group of colleagues. Spain has treated me with so much tolerance and generosity, taught me so much, given me so much during almost half a century, that I feel obliged to pay something back. I've thought about this for a long time. But what do you give to a country that has everything? It was the economic crisis that finally gave me the idea. One of Spain's problems today is the huge backlog of unsold homes built during the boom years during the first part of this century. The country cannot get out of the slump until those homes are sold. One of the most delightful experiences we've had in making this magazine is meeting foreigners who already live in Spain and hearing them tell how much they love it. We've interviewed a few of them, and we're going to be talking with a lot more. They are the proof of the pudding. It's their testimonials that are going to convince their countrymen back home that Spain is the place to go for human civilization, for lifestyle, and for good times. In short, for a more interesting, more rewarding life. Did I mention that alegría is Spanish for joy? That's the essence of what the magazine is about. Please note, just because alegría is ultimately about selling homes in Spain, don't be tempted to think it's just another of those boring real estate sites. In fact, there's no advertising at all in the editorial section. To see homes for sale, you have to choose to click on a separate link called Looking for a Home. As for the rest, it's all joy. Read about it in Alegría, the Joy of Spanish Living. It's on internet at alegriaonline.net. Thanks for your interest and your patience. Hasta la vista.
Mike, thank you very much. Let's jump
My
over
pleasure,
to Calgary. Let's jump over to Calgary, Canada, where we have blogger Abby Paul on the line. Abby blogs his travel tips on traveling through Spain on a budget on larkycanuck.com.
Hi, thank you, Patricia. Hello, everyone who's joined us today for the Connexion Spain Virtual Trade Show. And as Patricia mentioned, I am a blogger based out of Calgary, Canada. And it was very interesting as I was following the blog like yourselves, listening to Rod and Mike's stories, and very interesting narrative that goes with the photos of Spain. And one thing that struck in the images was how warm Spain is. And for those of you who have been, you will recognize that. And I find that quite interesting and paranoical at the same time, because as I speak today about talking on travel to Spain, in Calgary it is snowing outside, and we've already collected about 3 centimeters of snow on the ground. And as far as I know, in the northern hemisphere, it's officially spring. Anyhow, that's why probably Rod he had mentioned that he had a big collection of orders from Canada. It's probably this is the reason why Canadians love to travel to Spain. One of the things I decided to focus on today was to talk a little bit on the cost side of things, because with travel, especially for North Americans, we are challenged by 2 aspects. One is time, given our hectic work life, and the cost to travel, of course, to outside of our borders. And Canada, U.S. are 2 big countries, and there's plenty of avenues to explore regionally, but as some of you have experienced, trying to get abroad can be a bit of a cost challenge at times. However, that should not discourage people to consider opportunities to travel, and this is where I come in. I am a working person, and I hold a regular job, and it was a couple of summers ago when I was just like every other person who would be clicking through slideshows, presentations, and Excel spreadsheets and have those screensavers running in the background showing you these wonderful pictures of warm places. And one day I just told myself that why is it not possible to actually have a life that balances good adventure, fun travel with the family with your regular work life? And this is where I came in, and I started to write a lot on how you can engage in adventure activities for the family, primarily targeted for North Americans, and you can do it affordably. So let's start off with my cheapo's guide to doing Madrid in 2 days, and there's a little quick background on me. So I blog, as I mentioned, on affordable travel. My website, if you want to follow up for more tips and advice, is larkycanuck.com, and I also tweet a lot at larkycanuck. That photo there, you can see me. That's me holding a piranha. And this is, of course, not in Spain. This is the one time I cheated in the photo. This was taken in the Amazon jungle. But this is kind of a little insight of the type of blogging I do. I talk about fun, adventure, family activities, which is affordable. All right, so moving on. This is the story of Madrid for the Stingy Road Warrior. So I'm just going to go back to the previous slideshow. Here, if you look at the bottom green portion, you will see I put a note there. It says, without the hassle of backpacking, couch surfing, hostling, and ride sharing. Obviously, my focus is that, there is obviously affordable ways to travel for the budget traveler, but I am a family man, and I'm not at that stage where I could be doing a lot of backpacking and living in hostels type of thing. And I presume that some of you who are on this presentation today are probably of similar demographics, and you're looking for a little balance where you have a little bit of the privacy and comfort, but you're also looking for, the cost savings part so it doesn't break a budget for the family. The first off, I would say that obviously Madrid is a very big city, and you can well imagine that it has plenty of not only attractions but of opportunities to engage with unique aspects of the Spanish culture. So 2 days is obviously, anyone will tell you, is not enough time, but my take is that if you were on a budget and if you're traveling and you're trying to cover several places on a trip to Spain, it's better to experience at least 1 day off a Spanish city than to experience none. And so it's doable, and this is if you're on a budget short trip to Spain. This is where I can share some ideas on what you can do if you had just 2 days to spend. My first tip here is carry brown bread from home, because either you won't find it or it will be expensive. This was something I found uniquely something I wouldn't say Spanish, but at least in the major cities that I was traveling when I was in Spain, is they love bread, and it goes with the European and primarily the Spanish culinary tradition of bread, which I guess for North Americans has become a bit of a paradox, because bread has become something to be concerned about or be afraid of. With all the media talking about low carb diets and going gluten free and whatnot, none of that stuff in Spain. But obviously, if you're sort of a person who's a little bit on the health conscious side, one of the things you'll find is that you will not have too much avenues to look for your sort of different styles of low-carb diet that you might be on a program back in your country. So finding alternative options was a challenge, and this is why I just made this sort of very singular but obvious point is if you have certain diet concerns, carry stuff that's specific to your diet with you. Bring it from your place rather than trying to find the options here because of the differences in the culinary style. The next one tip is that when you're in Madrid, there is the city tour bus, double-decker bus that does the circuits. In Madrid, I believe they have 2 circuits that they do, and there's 2 different buses that do 2 rings of the city center. If I recall, each one takes about 2 hours. That is, if you don't get off the bus. This is one of those hop-on, hop-off tours. My recommendation to you would be that get on the bus and do both circuits and don't get off, and wait to see which spots you would find most interesting, and then you can always come back and explore them in more detail at a later point. But what this enables you to do is actually not miss out on seeing or maximizing your time on the tour and being able to capture most of the spots that you should see. The next tip is buy a 2-day ticket. One of the things I found out, and this was a mistake I've made in prior travels at different places, is I would just buy a ticket for a day trip. Turns out, in most places, if you buy a multiple day ticket, it actually works out a lot cheaper on a per day basis. So, for example, when you purchase tickets for the Madrid hop-on hop-off tour, if you buy a 2-day ticket, it only costs an extra €4 more. And this gives you obviously more time to spread out your trip and be able to get back to places that you might have missed on the first day. Highly recommend getting the 2 days if you have the time. In terms of staying, lodging, this becomes another big expense, obviously, whenever you're traveling to a foreign country. My suggestion would be that stay in the city center, which is Centro, or the downtown area. Although you might find, and when you do some search online and look for different type of accommodations, you will find that the rates at downtown location will be more expensive than in the suburbs. But what is important is the city is quite widely spread, and even though you can travel by transit, it gets expensive, and it is. You will find that in the long run, you'll actually save more if you happen to stay in the city center and do a lot of walking and take the buses and get around than to be commuting by even transit from some of the suburbs. So, and of course, you save on time, which is also very important if you're on a short stay. Food becomes another important challenge. And as I mentioned at my first slide, is if you have any special diet concerns, carry those items with you. But in terms of where to eat, I mean, there is obviously plenty of options, and the Spanish cuisine is highly varied, and it's not something you might have experienced in a Spanish eatery in North America. So from each region and province that you go, you will find that the culinary style does differ. One of my suggestions would be that while you can encounter some of the fancier establishments, do not miss out on a lot of the sort of local hole-in-the-wall places, as we call it sometimes in our North American lingo, is because you will find that you'll get a more varied range of culinary styles that's being offered, and as well the price will be cheaper, and most of the times the food is very safe. I mean, you have to realize this is Spain, which is obviously a major European hub, and has all the safety standards and regulations that you have in USA or Canada. So feel free and be a little adventurous. Go out there and go explore and look into little shops and poke in and see what the locals are eating. My recommendation: if you want to try real food, go where there are no tourists eating. That's where you get real authentic food. In terms of airfare, this becomes the third component of any travel budget recommendation. Airfare is a big challenge, as I mentioned. There are some simple tips on finding the best airfare. One of the big challenges that we've got today is there are so many websites that tout the best airfare and best package deals. Where do you start? Where do you stop? You're always afraid that what if the next site has the next best deal that you could get. The truth is, no website can offer anything so different or unique in an airfare than the other. The reason being, the airfares are not set by the website companies. They are set by the airlines. And if an airline offers a certain price, all websites that would find a result for the airlines would technically result in the same price offer, right? So I think one of the big headaches of budget travel is probably the challenge of having to find the best airfare. Here I will give you 3 sites which, in my opinion, are absolutely the simplest to work with and pretty much sums up the total search results that you might find if you had to go individual by individual sites. So it'll save you a lot of time, and you've probably got 95% chance that you've been able to locate the best airfare you can. The first one is Google Explore Flights. Google is famous for its search engine optimization. Therefore, and I really like their interface because if you're looking at that bar on the top, you can see it puts in a from and a to, and here I put in from Chicago to Madrid, and it'll tell you given, and at the bottom there's a slider, and you would extend the slider depending on how many number of days you plan to be spending. And what Google does is it tells you what has been the historically recorded lowest fare for a trip from your destination, from your origin to the destination for that duration of time. And on the right side of the screen, you will see that it says best price is $9.66. So that gives you a benchmark to work with. That may not be the actual price you will get, but it tells you that's what someone else has paid the lowest fare for that duration between the 2 destinations. So then you can compare and see where you end up with your actual fare search. The next one is Kayak, another really popular site among budget travelers. Again, the key thing is how simple they make the search. If you look to the left portion, basically has your standard search field. You'd put in your from, to, the dates, and everything. You can also do a round-trip search or a multi-city search in case you plan to have multiple cities and return from a different destination. If you look to the right where there's the square box, it does something very similar to the Google search function. Is it tells you in any given month, and you can scroll through and click on different months, what has been the lowest recorded airfare. So obviously, say if you were planning to travel at the beginning of August here, you would find that you would pay almost $150 more than if you had the flexibility to travel towards the end of August. That's really powerful, and this is how budget travelers utilize online tools to really accommodate their cost to fit with what the different nuances with the airlines industry has. And finally, the third one, which is Priceline.com. Most of you would be aware of this, and it's been a staple of the search engine and one of the initial founding airlines search engines. What I like about Priceline, I would not recommend them to be sort of the lowest airfare finder, but what I like is their name your own price feature, and I've actually used this on 2 occasions, once for a hotel and once for airfare. And you can, if you go back to the Google and the Kayak search, and if you sort of get an idea of what the low fares are, I would recommend that you come back here and you do a search and find what the airfares are, and then you can put in a bid to name a price which is lower than what the lowest airfare price is quoted on Priceline. And there is a good chance that you will get the price that you want. It's a 50-50, I would say, but there's no harm in trying, and the process is very simple. The one thing you should be careful of is you must be really sure of your travel dates and destinations, because once it's booked, if say you put in a fare that you want, that's your bid price, and Priceline will go and search for it and try and see if any airlines will offer the price or a hotel will offer it. If it gets accepted, you are booked. It takes your credit card information and it's confirmed. No cancellations, no transfers. So just make sure that you're absolutely certain on your dates and your destinations. So that brings my session to an end, and I hope I was able to share some tips on how you can manage your trip to Spain if this is going to be your first time. Do a little research, and definitely you're free to send questions now on this blog or at a later time on my blog at larkycanuck.com, or you can reach me on Twitter at larkycanuck. And thank you for attending, and enjoy the rest of the trade show.
Thanks so much, Abby. Thanks once again to all 3 of you, Rod from Books for Spain, Mike from AlegreOnline.net, and Abby of LarkyCanuck.com. Right now, I think we have time for just a couple of questions. We have had some come through in the queue. The first one that came in is from Mike. Mike, one of our attendees noticed a bottle of 103 brandy in your first photo and is asking, how do you rate Spanish brandy in comparison to French cognac, for instance?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask. I don't really know that much about French cognac, but and 103 is far from the best Spanish brandy. But as far as drinks in general are concerned, Spain has a wonderful assortment, and the prices are right. So don't worry about French brandy. Just come on over and have a good time.
Okay, and the second question that's come in is for Abby. Abby, how far is the airport from the city center?
The airport is it is a little far from the city center, and when I was in Madrid, I stayed actually closer to the airport in one of the suburbs, and this is where my suggestion to stay in the city center is, because I was starting to do a lot of the commute by the subway, and it would take almost an hour, a good hour, to get into the city center. and I think
on the subway. Pardon me.
On the subway, yes.
Yeah.
From the suburb close to the airport to the city center, and I think, if I recall, it was about €2 for a ticket each way per person. So obviously it adds up if you're in a group and if you're trying to commute back and forth over a couple of days. So yes, it is about, I would say, at least an hour away from the airport.
But by subway, though.
Yes, and I think
subway.
even if you were to take a taxi, it would still take about, I would think, 45 minutes, because that's what I remember we were told.
I would say
I'm sorry, I'm not sure that that's strictly true. I mean, I travel to Madrid a fair amount, and it depends obviously on the time of day. If you
on the time of day, yeah.
But I mean, you can get into Madrid in a taxi in 25 minutes. On the train, it's about 40 minutes. The tube is quite good. In fact, it's not an hour, it's about 40 minutes. And the other thing, if you do travel by metro, and the metro is pretty good in Madrid, is to buy one of these passes which entitles you to either a 2-day pass or a 10-trip pass or something like that. They have a combination of different passes for tourists, which are cheaper than obviously buying a ticket for one way or return just to one stop. So it's definitely worth buying a pass for either a 2-day pass or a 10-trip pass, because it works out about €1 a trip then, rather than the 2. So I travel to Madrid a lot, and I use the tube a lot because it's a very congested city centre, and travelling by taxi can take a long time from even going from a short distance, and the tube is actually very good. Sorry about that. I just thought I'd give you my...
Rod, it's excellent to have other feedback. Here's my feedback. Being from Chicago, I tend to compare everything to how long it takes to get from O'Hare downtown in terms of time and cost. And I'm also a frequent traveler to Madrid, and I find it to be faster and slightly less expensive to get from Barajas to downtown Madrid. As Rod pointed out, it depends on the time of day. If you're doing this at rush hour, then it will of course take longer. And well, let's see. Any other questions? I don't see any having come through the queue at this point. Well, if not, I think that wraps everything up. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us, and thanks to all of today's listeners and viewers. Now we urge you to please go back and enjoy the virtual trade show and chat with our many exhibitors. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Patricia.
Bye-bye.
Bye.